Hey folks, welcome to Cabin in the Pines, and we are here today with Carl Young, who is the administrator for the county. He is really going to help us understand how the county master plan, which was published in 2025, it's about 77 pages, how it really applies to us in Pinehaven. The last article was about Cuchara. We're going to focus a little bit on Pinehaven. We'll spill over into that. Carl, you are a busy man. You are head of all county operations. You're the guy that's got to try to put feet to whatever the commissioners pass and push through. And on top of that, you're dealing with all the administrative details. Big county, diverse county. And man, I just want you to know that we in Pinehaven sure appreciate what you do. And we're so glad you cut out some time for us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, and I'm great to be able to work for the people of this county. It's a great joy every day.
So when you put a plan together like this, it usually takes years. I was involved a little bit in the metro area, and things kind of morph and they develop, and then other things never develop because you get new information. But talk to us a little bit about how you use community input to build that comprehensive plan, because I think there's a tendency, some can think, man, was this community represented? Was that community represented? Those of us in Cuchara, we're kind of in the mountains, and it's a little bit different. So talk to us how you incorporated all that diversity into the input when you were putting the plan together.
Absolutely. So when we were putting together this plan, it was put together over the course of, I want to say 2 or 3 years. It was a very long process. Also unique in a way because the steering committee that sort of helped guide the development of this plan wasn't just the county planning commission. It was comprised of representatives from around the county and different facets of life, and also people from the city and the town, the city of Walsenburg, town of Levita, participated as well to help us come up with this comprehensive plan for unincorporated Huerfano County. So part of that is community outreach. We did a number of community outreach events throughout the county. I believe we did at least one in each community. I know there are, I think, a couple more in Walsenburg and Levita, especially because when you get into doing them in the winter time, it gets harder to access parts of the county where people aren't here.
Yeah.
But our general goal when we're doing a plan effort like this that is countywide is we'll have at least one meeting in each part of the county. Gardner and Cuchara are 2 unincorporated communities. They have real functional downtowns, just like any city or town would, and that anchors that community in a way that makes it important for how we do our planning efforts, both for the comprehensive plan, but in general.
As some of these plans get feet, we're going to talk about details in a moment. I imagine that feedback loop doesn't stop. You will probably do follow-up meetings, and I did read something in the minutes about in our minutes about you guys hosted a meeting at the Timbers a couple years ago, and community people went there about fire mitigation and those kinds of things. Well, listen, the plan is big, 77 pages. Not all of it applies to Cuchara, but every community could say that. Not all of it applies, but there are a couple that I wanted to get your input and talk about. One that is really near and dear to our heart is fire mitigation and forest management. And the plan mentions that it wants to step that kind of thing up. Forest management, hazards, environmental hazards, these kinds of things. I would guess for most of us, that involves fuel reduction, project improvements, evacuation planning, those kinds of things. How would that apply to Pinehaven? And do you see anything coming down the pike that would affect Cuchara? And of course, Pinehaven's in North Cuchara. I don't know if you've been up here or not, but where would the fire mitigation impact points be with us?
So you have, I want to say, 2 or 3 main impact areas for fire mitigation. One is, of course, right around the home. I believe Pinehaven is a fire-wise community.
Yes.
Yes. Then we get into creating defensible lines, which is more along Highway 12, and then into community-wide mitigation, which is more about the boundary between the Forest Service and non-Forest Service lands in the area. Levita Fire has been a major leader on this, with the county being in support. Of course, SWAP, the Spanish Peaks Alliance for Wildfire Protection, is also a major partner, and of course the U.S. Forest Service. Right now, actually, we're working on a community wildfire protection plan for the entire county, and part of that effort is to do a lot of that planning you're talking about, to develop the what we call pods, the planned operational delineations, places where we can control the fire if one were to happen to protect values at risk, as well as to generally plan out mitigation efforts. And we also just finished in the last year or so our hazard mitigation plan. Same thing, lots of mitigation plans for various hazards, but the CWPP, the County Wildfire Protection Plan, is dead centered on wildfire mitigation and protecting our values at risk.
Do you anticipate, we are FireWise, we got a wonderful coordinator in here. Our president was previously the coordinator, so it's always kind of on the radar. Do you anticipate any requirements for Pinehaven that would be in addition to the normal stuff pushed down through FireWise?
Yes, so the county in the last 2 or 3 months, we adopted the Colorado Wildfire, the WUI code, the Wildfire Urban Resiliency Code.
How do you keep track of all these acronyms? That's a big question right there, but go ahead.
No, I try my best to not just get into speaking alphabet soup.
Yeah.
So if I do, please let me know. But the Wildfire Resiliency Code is about new construction and about mitigation around houses, and sort of has some standards there. The building authority recommended to the commissioners to adopt the state plan. We talked with the fire districts in order to do that. And I think hopefully our big hope is that it'll help lower the cost of fire insurance, of homeowners insurance in our county, but particularly to improve in some areas of the county. It's difficult to get homeowners insurance because of the wildfire risk.
Yeah.
Hoping that adopting that, and along with the CWPP and other actions we're taking, will help us. People can have that insurance that's so important.
Will that be applied just to new builds or previous existing structures?
It's most dramatic on new builds, but I believe there are a couple of instances where if you're doing a major renovation of a certain size or an expansion,
Yeah.
that will come into play.
Okay. Yeah, and we, our community's been pretty active. Matter of fact, the company that we hire for pickup, they told me, he said, man, I've taken more out this year than in all the years combined. People are really starting to, get some momentum on that. So I appreciate that, and that's a good heads up for us. The second impact point is along Highway 12. You guys want to make some significant transportation improvements, and I know that will change depending on where you're at. But what would that look like for us if you were to kind of summarize the impact points for Cuchara? What will the Highway 12 transportation improvements look like on our end?
So, 2 or 3 main things for transportation improvements. First is wayfinding along the Highway of Legends. That's been a project that the Scenic Highway of Legends organization has been working on for a few years. Deborah Malone and Mike, who runs Dodson Creek Inn, are a couple of the movers and shakers that are making that happen.
Is that the process where you follow along with an app and it gives you kind of a tourist guide through, or am I thinking of something else?
You're thinking of something else. That's the tourism board that did those walking tours and driving tours of the county, and there's one of Cuchara. We did those back a few years ago, 2018, 19. This wayfinding is more about signage. It's more about finding the points of interest. If someone's driving along, where they know where to stop, where's a restroom, where's something to eat, where are the points of interest and activities at. And the thought there has been that this should be a byway-wide amenity, essentially, that helps move travelers along the byway. And so many of our wonderful spots and places, from trailheads to the Cuchara Mountain Park, they're off the beaten road, so it can help people find their way.
That's awesome. So I imagine an impact for us might be there might be more signage about the village, what's in the village, restaurants, those kinds of things. When do you anticipate those kind of things gaining traction and to where we're seeing those?
I expect a few years. The state's budget situation, the state's a major funder of these kind of activities. And with that being the sort of where it is, I imagine that things will slow down for a few years.
Hmm.
Once the state gets its financial house in order, and once maybe we can find money here, there, or elsewhere to help pay for it, but it'll take some time.
Okay. And what would you guess if I had to say, hey, give me two impact points that you see this affecting Cuchara? What two things would you mention?
Well, for the wayfinding, it should be very little impact. You'll see some more signs here and there, some things pointing different places. What we're hoping to do that will have a bigger impact on Cuchara is a walking trail. Um, when I came in as county administrator, one of the things that concerned me, even from before when I was working in economic development and tourism in this county, um, was the lack of sort of sidewalks, if you will, along Highway 12 or some sort of path.
Hmm.
You see people walking on the highway a lot, which I think has been fine for the longest, but every now and then there's a lot of people walking into downtown or there's a lot of traffic, and it does worry me a bit. I think over the time we've sort of been able to confirm how much people are worried about that in general in the area. So a few years ago, we applied for a grant from the state, from CDOT, to study a walking trail
Oh, wow.
from downtown to the mountain park. I think eventually we want to extend that to Pinehaven as well, but stops at downtown for right now,
So
and
you're
try to find
talking
a
Cuchara, from Walsenburg
village
to Levita to Cuchara? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you saying downtown in the village in Cuchara?
downtown in the village.
Okay.
There is a byway wide trails plan, and this is
Wow.
probably going to be one of the first built segments of that, out in the county at least, where you're talking about something that will hopefully one day stretch from Walsenburg through Cuchara all the way to Trinidad.
Yeah. Well,
That's
that's
probably a
awesome.
few decades
Yeah,
away.
and that is a need. As you know, when you come up Highway 12 into Cuchara, there's so many sharp turns because of the way that creeks were many years ago and different things. And boy, it can be dangerous. We've walked down with our kids and grandkids down to the village a couple times, and you gotta have a heads up. So that would be a huge improvement. Probably the number one area, moving to the third area that I think, Carl, would impact us is the focus on recreation and tourism development. I noticed that you guys really see the whole Cuchara area as a recreational opportunity, and boy, it has grown significantly in that aspect since the early 1900s. What kinds of improvements or partnerships do you think that will look like when those changes start being implemented?
Sure. So the crown jewel of this is Cuchara Mountain Park. That is one of the county's major tourism assets, and that I think helps shape what recreation in the entire county looks like. I think that in general, what we're after is trying to strike a balance between sort of the trails and things that people who are already here, who have been here, who live here, um, and they sort of like the exclusivity of those trails with the desire for growth and the economic needs of the county. Um, Parks and recreation in general has settled into this nice little middle ground there where we feel like if we build things for our folks that are already here, that starts to not just help out with the health and wealth of the folks that are here, but also to help build that economy that we want to in a way that is hopefully sustainable.
Yeah.
The folks that did this master plan for us, uh, SE Group, they were our primary consultants. You might remember that name. They also did the master plan for Cuchara Mountain Park. That's part of the reason why Cuchara features so well into the master plan is because this particular group, the same folks who actually did the master plan were some of the same folks that were doing this one, the master plan for the park, same with it, they did the master plan for the county.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of knowledge that they already had about Levita Cuchara and particularly about the Cuchara area.
I would imagine, you hear this, you're not new to this, you've been involved for a while. There's two kind of schools in Cuchara. They're, hey, this is a blast, we want to see more outdoor activities, and then there's a group, hey, we love this quiet place, leave it alone.
Mhm.
What would you say to the folks that are worried about that they might lose that quiet mountain character in all these changes? What would you say to someone that has that concern in the back of their head?
I would say, in one sense, they are not alone. that concern runs throughout the county. Actually, both of those concerns run throughout the county. I think with the county commissioners, over time, they have shared that concern. We want to see economic growth, but we don't want to see so much growth that it ruins what we love about being here.
Mm-hmm.
So it is striking a balance. And, for those folks who don't want to see certain, values be lost, it's important, just as it is for folks that want to see growth, that you participate in these meetings between the consultants that we bring in and our staff and our leadership, and the public feedback that we get. I feel like most times we're able to strike this balance, or at least try to strike this balance between, what we're building and sort of how it impacts the rest of the county, and particularly for Cuchara or Gardner, or unincorporated communities that don't have their own political voices.
Yeah. How would you, before we move to the next one, that concern that we maintain the culture, and I know that all communities grow just as time goes by. Would you say, if you had to say on a scale of 1 to 5, the county's empathy with that concern of preserving the Quiet Mountain character, it sounds like it's higher than some folks might realize, but where would you place that at?
So with sort of 5 being the most concern,
Yeah.
I'd probably say it bounces between, on what the issue is, between a 3 and a 4.
Okay.
And
Well,
that's for a lot of reasons.
That's good to know. We love it here. My wife and I love it here. We used to be up on the East Slope, very similar community, Cuchara. They allowed some builders to come in to do condos, and boy, 10 years later, it was just a whole different place. And you know how that is. Momentum just happens, right? And so that I'm glad to hear that. Let's move on to water. That's the problem that everybody has, and no one has a solution, at least a solution that we can see measurable progress on. And so much of this is beyond our control. But water and infrastructure planning was part of the priorities, and I loved that when I read it, because we're in a forest here in Cuchara. And boy, I've even noticed in the last year in the drought, some of the trees are really distressed. And even on my property, I'm wondering, I told my wife, I think there's 5 trees that aren't going to make it. But where do you see the water initiatives impacting Cuchara?
So admittedly, the county isn't always the lead on this. That entire section was steered a lot by the expertise that exists throughout the county, but necessarily in the county government. People like Doug Burgosh, the late Sandy White, those folks and the work they've been doing for a very long time in this county have helped steer the county's thought process around growth, and around sort of what we can sustain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's important that we take the time when we're considering a development project. We reach out as part of our standard process to the utilities that are involved, the other agencies that are involved in our area, and seek their comment. And it's very important that those agencies respond back to those comments, because we do take them very seriously. Like I said, the county ourselves, we're not necessarily the one doing all that work outside of Gardner, where we operate the water and sewer system in Gardner. Other than that, we're listening to our partners. We're working with the Huerfano County Water Conservancy District, which is an independent district. They have been leading for several years. I'm not sure actually when it began, an effort to develop more reservoirs in Huerfano County. And they are particularly working in the Cuchara River Basin now to try to develop a new reservoir. Again, water storage is a massive need in our county.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in time, and people who know more are probably better to tell you the story, but at some point in time, we lost a lot of water storage in this county. And I don't have a great idea of why we lost those acre feet of water storage, but bringing that back, getting that water storage back so that when we do have dry years, we have access to water in order to keep functioning, it's very important.
Yeah, and boy, there's a long on-ramp for those, isn't there? I know that in the metro area, they're planning stuff that's 20, 30 years out. Of course, those reservoirs probably they have a little bit more room for those things than we do down here. Do you anticipate, are you hearing anything that we haven't heard yet about water projections for the future?
Um, Not necessarily something that, as the county, we are particularly involved in. We're sort of a receiver of that information rather than a generator of it. Um, I think everyone's concerned generally about the sort of general trend we've seen in the county
Hmm.
of things getting drier over time. That was one of the big impediments to Cuchara Mountain Park. How much snow can we really rely on from year to year?
Hmm.
Um, so it's a major concern that factors into a lot of our planning efforts and a lot of our decision making.
Okay. Well, hey, let's move on to the fifth area. We were running out of time here, and that is protection of scenic and environmental resources. I was very pleased to read that in the report. That's, when you get down here in Cuchara, Pinehaven, that's why people are here, and some of them have been here their families have been here over 100 years. But when you think about the protection of wildlife habitat, watersheds, mountain landscapes, forests, what does the county consider important things to save and protect in the Cuchara area?
So when we talk about that, we're talking mainly about view sheds a lot. Um, Wildlife concerns, things like that, are somewhat random throughout the county, if you will. At least from where I sit, you have certain areas of range that are elk habitat or deer habitat or antelope, um, you know, game that people go and hunt. You also have other creatures that are endangered or at risk that have unexpected habitats you didn't expect to find um, when something's going on. So for the most part, these things show up. These kind of considerations show up when there's a specific project in a specific area that we want to consider. There's also sort of an element of constant involvement. The federal government, when they're managing their federal lands, will take consideration all these and they'll put out this plan or that plan. The state will do it as well. Um, so we want to be attentive to those kinds of activities, both in terms of we want to preserve that wildlife habitat, but also there is a fairly sizable hunting culture in the county um, that we want to make sure is being considered as well.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, listen, Carl, I got one more easy question for you. One of the things that drives me nuts about our culture right now is we are much better at assigning blame than we are coming up with solutions, right? And as the county administrator, you got a view at the top of the mast that we don't see. You have a line of sight we don't have. If you were to name one or two ways that those who live in Pinehaven can become part of the solutions instead of the problems, if you had a wish list for that, what would it look like? Talk to me about what we can do to be part of the solution.
I think it comes down to engagement. You know, Beyond just the county and engaging with our public processes and when we put out requests for information or have a public meeting, um, it's a small county and it's a fairly small community. Even, you know, Cuchara, Levita, Walsenburg, Gardner, they're all very unique communities, right? Um, but to visit events that are in Levita or Walsenburg or Gardner, to get to know folks from around the county, that's what ends up making, I think, our lives easier as a county government is when when the people in the county, throughout the county, understand each other's needs and concerns. They know each other. There's
Hmm.
community there. We don't want to, when one of our communities is isolated and sort of inwardly focused on themselves, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing, but when that's the status quo, that becomes a difficulty for us. Because as a
Hmm.
county, we have to think countywide, and we can't just focus on one community.
Yeah.
Um, so that kind of shared work and shared cooperation amongst just from citizen to citizen,
Yeah.
resident to resident, is a major thing that can help us build a stronger county, a better county.
Well, I appreciate that. Tribalism is good, but it also keeps us a little bit isolated from those around us. Carl, you are a busy man. Time is like gold to you. So thanks for giving us a little window into how the comprehensive plan from 2025 impacts with us. And we're going to take to heart, and we appreciate your carving out some time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.